Dog won't stop barking at cyberpunk Tesla in alley. What police find inside leaves everyone in shock. Max's ears perked up seconds before the radio crackled to life. Sarah Collins had learned to trust these micro-expressions from her canine partner. They'd saved her life more times than she cared to count. Tonight, his sudden alertness sent a familiar chill down her spine. All units in Zone 6, we have reports of an abandoned Tesla Model S in the industrial district, Fleming Street Alley. No plates, no response from vehicle interface. Sarah's hand was already on the radio before dispatch finished. Unit K97 responding, 3 minutes out. She glanced at Max through the rearview mirror, catching his intense gaze. The Belgian Malinois sat perfectly still, but his muscles were coiled tight, ready for action. The October rain hammered against the patrol car's roof as they turned into Fleming Street. Atlanta's industrial district loomed around them, a maze of warehouses and loading docks turned ominous by the stormy night. The headlights caught the Tesla's silver paint, making it gleam like a pearl against the wet concrete and brick. "Stay," Sarah commanded, though she knew Max wouldn't move until she gave the signal. She stepped out into the rain, her boots splashing in puddles as she approached the vehicle. Brand new, she noted, not a scratch on it, the kind of car that had no business being abandoned in this part of town. Her flashlight beam revealed an immaculate interior through the windows. No signs of struggle, no personal belongings, just that new car perfection that made her instincts scream that something was very, very wrong. Max's bark shattered the night's relative quiet. Sarah spun around to see him straining against his harness, eyes locked on the Tesla. She'd worked with him for 6 years, long enough to know every variation of his barks. This wasn't his alert for explosives or narcotics. This was something else, something that genuinely unsettled him. "Dispatch, requesting backup at Fleming Street location. Possible." The Tesla's doors suddenly unlocked with a soft click, then swung open on their own. Sarah drew her weapon, muscle memory taking over as she moved to cover while calling out, "Atlanta Police! Anyone inside the vehicle, make yourself known!" Only the sound of rain answered her. Max was at her side now, his training overriding his earlier agitation. They approached the open vehicle together, moving in the synchronized pattern that had become second nature. Sarah cleared the interior while Max circled the perimeter, his nose working overtime. The inside of the Tesla was spotless, that distinctive new car smell still lingering. Sarah holstered her weapon and began a methodical search. Everything seemed normal until Max jumped into the back seat, his nose leading him straight to the center console. A series of sharp whines preceded his paw, hitting a seemingly invisible catch. There was a soft click and a hidden compartment popped open. Sarah's flashlight revealed a nest of electronics that definitely hadn't come from the Tesla factory. Signal boosters, modified circuit boards, and what looked like military-grade encryption devices. "Dispatch, we're going to need cybercrimes out here. We've got..." The rest of her transmission was drowned out by an explosion of radio chatter. Multiple units calling in simultaneously, their voices overlapping in barely contained panic. 3 Teslas just ran the light at Peachtree. Vehicle collision at Monroe and Ponce. Autonomous vehicle involved. They're everywhere downtown, moving on their own. Officer needs assistance. Cars blocking intersection at... Max's urgent barking pulled her attention back to the Tesla. He was now at the trunk, pawing frantically at the latch. Sarah triggered the release, and the trunk lifted smoothly. Her flashlight beam caught something metallic among more electronic equipment. She reached in, her gloved hand closing around a familiar shape. When she pulled it out, her heart stopped. An FBI badge, caked with dried blood. "Dispatch," she managed, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her system. "Be advised, we've found credentials belonging to Special Agent Thomas Chen. Yes, the missing federal agent." The radio crackled with static before dispatch responded, "Stand by, K927. We're getting reports of autonomous vehicles going haywire all over the city. Multiple accidents, intersections blocked. Christ, they're saying at least 30 Teslas are moving without drivers." Sarah looked at the equipment in the hidden compartment, then at Max, who stood alert at her side. "This isn't just about one car, is it, boy?" Thunder rolled overhead as emergency sirens began to wail across Atlanta. Through the rain-streaked windshield of her patrol car, Sarah could see traffic lights reflecting off wet pavement, creating halos in the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, tires screeched, followed by the sound of crunching metal. The city was about to descend into chaos, and Sarah had a sinking feeling they'd just found ground zero. Max pressed against her leg, his warmth a reminder that whatever they were about to face, they'd face it together. She took one last look at the Tesla, so innocent on the outside, harboring such dangerous secrets within, just like the last case that had nearly killed them both. But this time felt different. This time, it wasn't just their lives on the line. "Dispatch, we're staying with the vehicle. Get every available cyber unit here now. And you might want to warn the mayor. I think this is just the beginning." As if in response, another crash echoed through the rain-soaked streets, followed by more sirens. Sarah felt Max tense beside her, his eyes fixed on the Tesla's open trunk. There was something else in there, something they hadn't found yet, and judging by her partner's reaction, whatever it was, would blow this case wide open. She just hoped they'd live long enough to see it through. Rainwater dripped from Sarah's ponytail as she stared at the bank of monitors in Atlanta PD's Cyber Command Center. Each screen showed a different intersection thrown into chaos, luxury vehicles moving like possessed machines through the city streets. The casualty reports were starting to come in. 12 injured, 2 critical, no fatalities yet. It was a miracle no one had died. "How many cars are we looking at now?" she asked, scratching behind Max's ears. The Belgian Malinois hadn't left her side since they'd been called in from the field, his usual professional demeanor tempered by an obvious unease. James Morrison, her former mentor and head of the Cybercrimes Division, leaned forward in his chair. 47 confirmed Tesla hijacks, with reports still coming in. Whatever signal they're using, it's specifically targeting the Model S's autonomous systems. Sarah watched as another Tesla on screen swerved through traffic, barely missing a school bus. "Can't we just shut down the network?" "Tried that," Morrison replied, running a hand through his silver hair. "They've built in some kind of failsafe. Each car has its own internal command system now. Taking down the network would just leave them running their last received instructions." Max suddenly growled, drawing Sarah's attention to one of the smaller monitors. The feed showed their Tesla from the alley, now impounded in the department's secure garage. The trunk was open, and forensics techs were carefully cataloging its contents. "What is it, boy?" Sarah moved closer to the screen, trusting her partner's instincts. Max's nose twitched, and he pawed at the image of a particular circuit board being photographed. Sarah's blood ran cold as she recognized its design. "That's impossible," she whispered. Morrison wheeled his chair over. "What are you seeing, Collins?" Sarah zoomed in on the component. "That's one of mine. A fail-safe protocol I designed 5 years ago when I was still in tech. It was supposed to prevent exactly this kind of hijacking, but..." She swallowed hard. "The project was shut down after my brother's accident." The room grew quiet, except for the steady hum of computers and the distant sound of sirens. Morrison's expression darkened. "You never told me you worked in autonomous vehicle security." "It was before the academy, before Canine unit." Sarah felt Max press against her leg, offering silent support. "After David died in the test crash, I needed a complete change." She turned to face her mentor, but something in his carefully neutral expression made her pause. Morrison had always been hard to read. It was what made him such an effective interrogator. But there was something different in his eyes now, something that made Max's fur stand on end. "The project files were all destroyed," Sarah continued, watching Morrison's reaction. "The only copies were stored on secure servers at Autosafe Technologies, and they went bankrupt right after..." A commotion at the door cut her off. Agent Lisa Chen from the FBI burst in, followed by 2 tech specialists rolling equipment cases. "We've got a match on the blood from the badge," she announced, her face grim. "It's my brother's, and we found this in his apartment." She held up a sealed evidence bag containing a thumb drive. "He was investigating Autosafe's bankruptcy. Apparently someone bought all their patents and research data 2 days before they folded. The company name was buried under shell corporations, but Tom tracked it to a deafening alarm cut through the command center. On the main screen, all 47 hijacked Teslas suddenly accelerated to maximum speed. "They're on a collision course with populated areas," one of the techs shouted. "Downtown, shopping districts, school zones. Clear those zones now," Morrison barked into his radio. "All units, get civilians off the streets. Use roadblocks, anything. Wait." Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. She was staring at a line of code scrolling across one of the auxiliary monitors. "This is wrong. The fail-safe I designed. It shouldn't be able to override manufacturing safety protocols unless..." She spun to face Morrison, reaching for her weapon, but he was faster. The taser hit her square in the chest, sending her sprawling. Through the electrical fire in her nervous system, she heard Max's furious barking, a gunshot, and Agent Chen shouting for backup. The last thing Sarah saw before losing consciousness was Morrison calmly walking to the main console, his fingers flying over the keyboard as the city descended further into chaos. On the screen behind him, a familiar error message flashed, the same one she'd seen moments before her brother's car had gone out of control. This wasn't just about controlling cars or extortion. This was about revenge, and she'd just discovered why her brother had really died. Sarah regained consciousness to the familiar warmth of Max's breath on her face. The Belgian Malinois whined softly, his dark eyes filled with concern. A bandage on his shoulder showed where Morrison's bullet had grazed him. "I'm okay, boy," she whispered, reaching up to touch his muzzle. Her chest burned where the taser had struck, and her head throbbed. The command center was a mess of shattered screens and overturned furniture. Agent Chen sat nearby, pressing a bandage to a cut on her forehead. "Morrison's gone," Chen said, helping Sarah sit up. "He triggered some kind of system-wide meltdown and disappeared. The cars are still active, but they've stopped their collision courses. Now they're just waiting." Sarah's mind raced through fragmented memories. The code she'd seen, the error message, her brother's face the last time she'd seen him alive. "We need to get to the archives. Now." The elevator ride to the basement felt endless. Max stayed pressed against Sarah's leg, alert despite his injury. 5 years of dust lay undisturbed in the records room, but Sarah moved with purpose through the narrow aisles until she found what she was looking for. Project Safeguard, Autosafe Technologies, 2020. "David was brilliant," Sarah explained as she pulled out the file. "He specialized in autonomous vehicle systems, saw their potential, but also their vulnerabilities. We worked together at Autosafe, designing protocols to prevent remote hijacking." Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. "He was always pushing to make things safer, more secure. That's what got him killed." The accident report lay on top, its photos still able to make her stomach turn. David's Tesla, crushed beyond recognition, the official cause, catastrophic system failure during a routine test. But now, looking at the error logs with fresh eyes, Sarah saw what she'd been too grief-stricken to notice before. "These aren't random corruptions," she said, spreading the papers across a dusty desk. "This is the same pattern we're seeing now. Someone deliberately crashed his car when he was testing the safety protocols." Agent Chen leaned in to study the logs. "But why? What did your brother find?" "Not what? Who?" Sarah pulled out more documents, connecting points that had haunted her dreams for years. 2 weeks before the accident, David told me he'd found something wrong in the approval process for autonomous vehicles. Someone was falsifying safety data, fast-tracking potentially dangerous systems for major manufacturers. Max suddenly barked, his attention drawn to a photo slipping from the file. Sarah picked it up, and her heart stopped. It showed the Autosafe executive team at a charity gala. There, standing next to David with a champagne glass raised, was James Morrison. "He wasn't just my mentor at the academy," Sarah whispered. "He was Autosafe's head of security when David died. The bankruptcy, the stolen research, my transfer to K9 unit, he orchestrated all of it." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Morrison had used her own safety protocols to kill her brother, then buried the evidence in Autosafe's collapse. Now he was using that same stolen technology to prove a point. Autonomous vehicles weren't safe, would never be safe, unless they used his improved systems. The waiting cars, Sarah realized, jumping to her feet. They're not just waiting, they're hostages. Morrison's going to offer his solution to the manufacturers. Either they pay him billions for his safer protocols, or he'll prove how vulnerable their systems are by killing innocent people. A distant explosion rocked the building. Above them, emergency lights began to flash. "That's the garage," Chen said, checking her phone. "The Tesla we found, it just self-destructed. All evidence gone." But Max was already moving, pulling Sarah toward a different shelf. His nose led them to another box, one labeled simply, "Personal Effects, D. Collins." Inside, beneath David's old laptop and family photos, lay a single thumb drive. Sarah held it up, her brother's handwriting visible on the label, "Insurance Policy, JM." "David knew," she said softly. "He knew Morrison would come after him, so he left a backup of everything he'd discovered." She turned to Chen, her voice steely with determination. "But we can't move on this yet. Morrison will be watching all official channels, waiting for us to try to expose him." "What's your play?" Sarah looked down at Max, who stood ready despite his injury, still her most trusted partner. "Morrison thinks he knows all my protocols, all my fail-safes. But there's one thing he never understood about my work with David." She pocketed the thumb drive. "We never trusted computers completely. Every system we designed had a physical override, something that couldn't be hacked because it wasn't digital at all." "And you can find these overrides?" Sarah smiled grimly, scratching behind Max's ears. "I don't have to. He already can. Those components Morrison stole and modified. They emit a unique electromagnetic signature. That's what Max has been sensing this whole time. That's why he was so agitated at the Tesla." Chen's eyes widened with understanding. "Your canine can track the modified cars." "Better than that," Sarah said, watching Max stand at attention ready for the hunt. "He can lead us right to Morrison's control center, and this time we'll have proof of everything, from David's murder to tonight's attacks." Thunder rumbled overhead as rain continued to pound Atlanta's streets. Somewhere out there, Morrison was watching his hostage cars, waiting to spring his trap. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd forgotten that Sarah's most powerful weapon wasn't digital at all. It was standing right beside her, 4 paws planted firmly on the ground, ready to avenge a death 5 years in the making. "Come on, Max," Sarah said, checking her weapon. "Let's finish what David started." A wall of security monitors dominated Atlanta's emergency operations center, each one showing a different Tesla frozen in place across the city. 47 potential weapons waiting for Morrison's command. The mayor paced behind Sarah while FBI tactical teams coordinated with local SWAT units. 3 hours, the mayor said, checking his watch again. "That's all Morrison gave us before he starts sending those cars into crowds. Unless every major manufacturer agrees to license his security protocols." Sarah studied the screens while Max worked his way around the room's perimeter, nose twitching. The bandage on his shoulder was a constant reminder of how dangerous Morrison had become. "He's not just after money," she said. "This is about control. He wants to be the gatekeeper for all autonomous vehicle systems." Agent Chen approached with a tablet displaying Morrison's demands. "He's asking for $2 billion from each manufacturer, plus exclusive contracts for all future security implementation." She lowered her voice. "Sarah, that thumb drive you found, our techs can't crack it. Whatever evidence your brother left, it's locked behind encryption we've never seen." David always thought differently about security," Sarah replied, watching Max closely. The Belgian Malinois had stopped near a particular monitor, his posture showing intense focus. He believed the best systems combine digital and physical elements, like how he helped me train Max to detect specific electronic signatures. She moved to the screen that had caught Max's attention. It showed a Tesla parked outside a downtown restaurant, but something about its position nagged at her. Pull up the locations of all the controlled vehicles. A tech quickly created a map overlay showing 47 red dots across Atlanta. Sarah's eyes narrowed as a pattern emerged. They're not random. The cars, they're positioned in a specific radius from somewhere. She grabbed a marker and started connecting points on the screen. It's a mesh network. Morrison needs to maintain constant communication with each vehicle. Oh, which means there's a central hub, Chen finished, understanding dawning on her face. Max, Sarah knelt beside her partner. Remember how we found that first Tesla? You sensed something specific about its electronics. She pulled a small component from her pocket, a piece of the destroyed equipment from the garage. Find it, boy. Find the source. Max's nose touched the component briefly before his head snapped up, alert and focused. He moved to the EOC's exit, then looked back at Sarah expectantly. We can track Morrison's control center, Sarah announced to the room, but we need to move now before he realizes what we're doing. The mayor stepped forward. You have SWAT and FBI tactical support. Whatever you need. Sarah shook her head. Small team only. Morrison has eyes everywhere. A large force will tip him off. She checked her weapon and vest. Agent Chen, pick your 3 best people. We go in quiet, following Max's lead. The deadline, the mayor started, is exactly why Morrison won't expect this, Sarah cut in. He thinks we're scrambling to negotiate with manufacturers, not hunting him directly. She patted Max's head. And he never understood what made our canine unit special. 20 minutes later, Sarah's small team moved through rain-slicked streets in an unmarked van. Max sat in the front, head tilted, processing sense and electromagnetic signatures that only he could detect. They'd passed 3 of Morrison's controlled Teslas, each one sitting silent like a predator waiting to strike. 2 miles into the industrial district, Chen whispered from the back. We're approaching. Stop! Sarah held up her hand as Max suddenly tensed. Back up slowly. The van reversed, and Max's attention fixed on a seemingly abandoned technology recycling center. Old satellites' dishes dotted the roof, most appearing broken or rusted. But Sarah noticed something the average person wouldn't. The raindrops weren't hitting all of them the same way. Holographic camouflage, she breathed. Those dishes are active, disguised to look defunct. Perfect setup for controlling a citywide network of cars. As if confirming her suspicion, Max gave a low whine, the same one he'd made when they'd found the first Tesla. Sarah studied the building's security. 2 guards trying too hard to look like regular night watchmen. Cameras hidden behind weather-worn cases. A loading dock that had seen suspicious activity recently, judging by the fresh tire marks. Chen, your people take the guards. Silent takedown. She stopped as a message flashed across her phone. Her blood ran cold as she read it. Did you think I wouldn't be monitoring David's old files, Sarah? You have 1 hour left. Don't waste it chasing ghosts. JM. Through the van's window, she watched as one of Morrison's Teslas rolled slowly past their position, its empty driver's seat a haunting reminder of what was at stake. He's playing with us, Chen said, reading over her shoulder. Sarah looked at Max, saw the determination in his stance that mirrored her own. No, she replied, pulling out her brother's thumb drive. He's scared, because if David left what I think he left, she plugged the drive into her specialized tablet. Morrison just told us exactly how to beat him. Her fingers flew across the screen as pieces of David's final puzzle began to fall into place. Everything. The cars, the control center, even Morrison's twisted revenge, all connected to one fatal flaw in autonomous vehicle systems. A flaw her brother had died trying to expose. Thunder crashed overhead as Sarah's tablet displayed a decryption prompt she recognized. Not a password or key code, but a pattern. The same pattern Max had been trained to detect in compromised electronics. Time to end this, boy, she whispered, rain dripping from her tactical vest as she readied her weapon. For David, Max's answering growl held 5 years of pent-up justice, ready to be unleashed. Somewhere in that building, Morrison waited with his digital hostages and blood-stained conscience. But he'd never faced anything like the fury of a sister avenging her brother, backed by a partner who could smell his technological deceptions. The final hunt was about to begin. Sarah pressed herself against the recycling center's wall, rain streaming down her face. Max crouched beside her, his muscles coiled and ready. Agent Chen and her team had successfully neutralized the guards, and now they moved like shadows through the facility's loading dock. The building's interior was a stark contrast to its decrepit exterior. Banks of servers hummed beneath harsh fluorescent lights. Screens displayed real-time data from each controlled Tesla, their positions marked across Atlanta's grid like pieces on a chessboard. But it was what Max led them to in the basement that made Sarah's heart stop. A medical pod, military-grade, hummed in the corner. Through its frosted glass cover, she could make out a human form. The vital signs displayed on its monitor were weak but steady. "Agent Chen," Sarah whispered into her radio, "we've found your brother. He's alive." Before Chen could respond, slow clapping echoed through the basement. James Morrison stepped out from behind a server bank, his silver hair immaculate despite the chaos he'd created. "I was wondering when Max would lead you here," he said, his voice carrying the same mentoring tone he'd used at the academy. "That mutt's ability to track my modified components. I have to admit, it's impressive. Almost as impressive as your brother's encryption." Sarah kept her weapon trained on Morrison, while Max's low growl filled the space between them. "Why, James? David trusted you. He trusted too much, just like you." Morrison moved to a central console, his movements deliberate and calm. "Did you really think Autosafe wanted to make vehicles safer? The company existed to prove a point, that autonomous systems could never be truly secure. Each safety protocol we developed had a built-in back door. Insurance companies, manufacturers, governments, they'd all have to pay for the privilege of keeping their precious self-driving cars from becoming weapons. But David figured it out. He was going to ruin everything." Morrison's facade cracked slightly. His pure, noble vision of perfect safety protocols. He actually believed technology could be inherently good. A cruel smile crossed his face. The look on his face when his own car turned against him. That was the moment he finally understood the truth. Sarah's finger tightened on her trigger. The truth? That control is the only real safety. Morrison's hand moved to his keyboard. Speaking of control, dozens of alerts suddenly flashed across the screens. Throughout Atlanta, the hijacked Teslas roared to life. 47 cars, Sarah, each one now accelerating toward the nearest crowd of civilians. Hospitals, schools, shopping districts, your choice. Shoot me and let them all die, or watch me walk away while you try to stop them. What would David choose? Sarah felt Max shift beside her, and in that moment, everything became clear. She smiled. "You still don't get it, do you?" She lowered her weapon slightly. "Why David helped me train Max, why he was so insistent that I take this specific job after he died." Morrison's hands hesitated over the keyboard. "What are you talking about?" "David knew you'd try something like this eventually. That's why he created a failsafe that couldn't be hacked." She patted Max's head. "One that could smell the difference between legitimate and compromised systems. One that could track the source of any hijack attempt. One that could detect the exact frequency your modified components emit." Understanding dawned on Morrison's face as Max began to move, not toward him, but toward a specific server bank. "The same frequency," Sarah continued. "That's keeping Agent Chen's brother alive in that pod. The same one controlling all those cars. A physical signal that can be—" "No!" Morrison lunged for his console, but Sarah was faster. Her shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him away from the controls. "Max! Now!" The Belgian Malinois lunged with surgical precision, clamping down on a cluster of cables his training had taught him to identify. With one powerful jerk, he severed Morrison's connection to his network. Across the city, 47 Teslas rolled safely to a stop. Morrison staggered back, clutching his shoulder. "You have no idea what you've done. The manufacturers, the contracts, are the least of your concerns." Agent Chen's voice rang out as she emerged from the shadows, weapon trained. attempted murder, terrorism, corporate espionage, and now we have proof you killed David Collins. More agents swarmed the room, securing Morrison and beginning the process of safely reviving Agent Chen from the medical pod. Sarah holstered her weapon and knelt beside Max, who sat alertly watching the proceedings. "Good boy," she whispered, touching the bandage on his shoulder. "David would be so proud of you." Her hand found the thumb drive in her pocket, her brother's final gift. Not just evidence of Morrison's crimes, but proof that truly secure autonomous systems were possible. Protection that didn't rely on extortion or control, but on the unbreakable bond between human and canine, analog and digital. Morrison's bitter laugh cut through her thoughts as agents led him away. "You still don't understand, Sarah. There'll be others. People who see these vehicles for the weapons they are. You can't—" Max's thunderous bark cut him off mid-sentence. Sarah smiled, scratching behind her partner's ears. "Actually, James, I think we understand perfectly. Some things can't be hacked, corrupted, or controlled. Like justice, like loyalty." She stood, her brother's legacy secure in her pocket and her most trusted partner at her side. Like the truth. Through the facility's high windows, dawn was breaking over Atlanta. The rain had finally stopped. The marble halls of Atlanta's federal courthouse echoed with the sharp click of Sarah's boots as she made her way to courtroom 3. Max walked beside her, his new tactical vest emblazoned with both FBI and Atlanta PD insignias. The Belgian Malinois had become something of a legend in the 2 months since the Tesla crisis. The dog who had outmaneuvered the most sophisticated cyber-terrorism attack in history. Sarah paused outside the heavy wooden doors, straightening her dress uniform. Through the polished wood, she could hear the murmur of the assembled crowd. Everyone who mattered in the autonomous vehicle industry was there to witness James Morrison's sentencing. "Ready, boy?" she whispered. Max's ears twitched in response, his posture alert but calm. The scar on his shoulder had healed, though Sarah's dreams were still haunted by the sound of Morrison's gun, the sight of her partner bleeding on the command center floor. They entered to find the courtroom packed. Agent Chen sat in the front row beside her brother Tom, who had made a remarkable recovery after being rescued from Morrison's cryogenic pod. Behind them were executives from every major car manufacturer, their faces a mix of shame and relief. Morrison's testimony had implicated dozens of them in his schemes, but their cooperation with the investigation had earned them leniency. Morrison himself sat at the defendant's table, silver hair now streaked with jailhouse grey. He didn't look up as Sarah and Max took their places, but his shoulder tensed, the same shoulder where Sarah's bullet had found its mark that rainy night. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Sarah listened as the prosecutor detailed Morrison's crimes: conspiracy, corporate espionage, attempted mass murder, and the premeditated killing of David Collins. With each charge, Max's quiet growl grew slightly deeper, as if he understood the weight of each accusation. The defendant's actions, the prosecutor concluded, represent not just a breach of trust, but an attack on the very foundation of our technological future. His attempt to hold an entire city hostage using hijacked vehicles was thwarted only through the extraordinary efforts of Officer Sarah Collins and her canine partner Max, whose unique training, developed by victim David Collins, proved that true security comes from the integration of human ingenuity, animal instinct, and technological innovation. When Morrison was given a chance to speak, his voice carried none of the smooth confidence that had once commanded boardrooms and training sessions. "I maintain that my actions were meant to expose crucial vulnerabilities," he said. "The autonomous vehicle industry was—" Max's sudden bark cut through his justification, drawing surprised laughs from the gallery. Sarah smiled, scratching behind her partner's ears. Even now he could detect Morrison's deceptions. The sentence, when it came, was decisive: life imprisonment without possibility of parole. As Morrison was led away, he finally met Sarah's eyes. For a moment, She saw past the facade to the bitter, frightened man who had murdered her brother out of nothing more than greed and spite. Outside the courthouse, Sarah faced a wall of reporters while Max sat regally beside her. Camera flashes reflected off his new medal, the highest civilian commendation the FBI could bestow on a service animal. Officer Collins, can you tell us about the new autonomous vehicle safety protocols being implemented? Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of David's thumb drive in her pocket. Today marks the beginning of the Collins Protocol, a revolutionary approach to vehicle security that my brother gave his life to create. Every autonomous vehicle manufacturer has agreed to implement these measures, which include the innovative detection systems that helped us stop the recent crisis. More questions followed, but Sarah's attention was drawn to a familiar face making her way through the crowd. Her mother approached, looking radiant in a blue dress that matched her eyes. David's eyes. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, embracing Sarah. "Both of you," she added, kneeling to hug Max, who responded with an enthusiastic lick. The three of them escaped to a quiet cafe near the courthouse, where Sarah's mother pulled out a worn envelope. "I found this in David's old things," she said. "It's dated the week before we lost him." Sarah opened it with trembling fingers to find a photograph. It showed her and David in the canine training facility, a younger Max sitting attentively between them. On the back, David had written, "The future of security isn't in controlling technology, but in understanding it. Sarah and Max will show the world how." "He knew," Sarah said softly. "He knew what Morrison was planning, knew that traditional cybersecurity wouldn't be enough to stop him. That's why he helped you transfer to K9 unit," her mother agreed. "Why he spent so much time helping you train Max to detect those specific electronic signatures. He was preparing you both for this moment." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from Agent Chen. A task force was mobilizing. Another potential automotive cyber threat had been detected. Sarah and Max were needed. "Duty calls," Sarah said, hugging her mother goodbye. "We'll do dinner soon. Go. Keep making your brother proud." As they drove to FBI headquarters, Sarah glanced at Max in the rearview mirror. His attention was focused forward, already alert for their next mission. The city rolled past them, traffic flowing smoothly now that the Collins Protocol was in place. Autonomous vehicles moved safely through the streets, their systems protected by the perfect integration of digital security and canine instinct that David had envisioned. The sky was clearing after a morning rain, sunlight glinting off the sleek buildings of downtown Atlanta. Sarah thought about Morrison in his prison cell, about the manufacturers implementing her brother's protocols, about the lives that would be saved by this new approach to security. "You know what, Max?" she said, watching her partner's ears perk up in the mirror. "I think we finally got it right. Technology doesn't have to be a weapon. It just needs the right guardians." Max's answering bark echoed through the car, confident, proud, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. On her wrist, Sarah's smartwatch displayed an incoming alert, the screen lighting up with details of their new case. The future was calling, and they would face it together just as David had known they would. The thumb drive in her pocket contained one last encrypted file, labeled simply, "For Sarah, when it's over." Tonight, she would finally open it, finally read her brother's last words. But for now, there was work to be done. "Let's go catch some bad guys, boy." And as they drove toward their next adventure, Sarah could have sworn she felt David's presence in the protocol that bore his name, in the partnership he had helped forge, and in the promise of a safer world that his sacrifice had made possible. Justice had been served, but their mission was far from over, and that was exactly how it should be.